All right, good morning. This is the time and place for the Planning Hearing Officer hearing of February 13, 2019. My name is Roger Kiesel, and I will be conducting the hearings as hearing officer. We have two cases on the agenda today, and relevant exhibits are posted on the panels located directly behind me. I would like to announce that the second item on the agenda, which is a variance application at 236 South Glendale Avenue, will be continued to February 20th, 2019, with no further notice. So again, the second item on the agenda, variance case number PVAR 1828024 at 236 South Glendale Avenue will be continued to February 20th, 2019. So the one case we have left is 452 through 458 West Milford Street. It's a density bonus housing plan. Case number PDBP 1717126. Basically, the hearing will proceed as follows. I'll read a description of the application and the request. I'll read the reports received from other city departments and other letters or communications from interested parties. The case planner will then make a brief overview of the case, give analysis, and make a recommendation. The applicant will then be asked to come forward stating both their name and address and be asked to present a case within 15 minutes. Then others in support of or in opposition to the case or application will be asked to come forward and will be given three minutes to speak. Finally, the applicant will be given the opportunity to make closing comments, if desired, in response to testimony given by preceding speakers with a 5-minute time limit. The hearing will then be closed and taken under submission. After the hearing, the decision will be prepared in writing and will be in the form of a letter sent to the applicant and to all persons who responded to the public notice, either by speaking at the hearing or submitting a letter, written response, and have provided their name and mailing address. The date of the decision will be the date appearing on the letter. Appeals. Under the appeal provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30.62 of the Glendale Municipal Code, the decision may be appealed to the Planning Commission within 15 days of the decision date, and the notice of appeal shall be filed with Building and Safety Division located in MSB Room 101 of this building. If you wish to speak, please write your name and address on one of the speakers forms, which were at our front door, and submit it to our planning staff. I would like to inform you that I'd like to inform everyone that the official proceedings of the Planning Hearing Officer's hearing are recorded on tape as public record. All right, so our first and only case today is located at 452 through 458 Milford Street. It's a density bonus housing plan. Case number PDBP 1717126. The applicant is My Milford LLC, and the planning staff person is Amilca Toledo. The project is proposing to demolish 3 residential dwelling units and a detached garage and construct a new 4-story, approximately 25,000 square foot multifamily residential building. The building will contain 15 units. On-grade parking garage will be providing 30 parking spaces. And the developer is asking for a number of concessions and waivers to provide some very low affordable housing in concurrence with the state density bonus law. We did have some comments from other city departments. Engineering just basically had a number of their standard comments. Glendale Water and Power additionally had what looks like standard comments for any development of this size. Building Safety had standard comments. Neighborhood Services cited some previous code violations that I think at this point have been rectified. So they don't have any new comments. Parks wanted to make sure that everyone knew that the project would be subject to the Public Use Facilities Development Impact Fee Ordinance, which requires fees to be paid to offset the impacts on parks, recreation, and library facilities. So the applicant needs to be aware of that. And then the arborists had comments on some street trees, stating that there are 2 street trees located in the parkway adjacent to the project, which weren't indicated on the site plan. The new driveway location may encroach on existing street trees, including a mature camphor tree and a juvenile pear tree. Please clarify impact to the trees and if the project intends to protect and retain one or both. Moderate impact will require removal and replacement. Tree protection measures should be considered and discussed. Permit to remove street trees will be required. Street tree replacement to be performed per a designated species list with the installation of 2 to 3 trees as the parkway space allows. And just to clarify, there weren't any protected trees observed on the site. So those were the comments from other city departments. We did receive one letter from a neighbor that just came in, and I'll just summarize her concern. I'm writing this email to oppose the demolition of these older homes and build a massive structure in an already crowded area of Glendale. This person lives on Milford and likes the neighborhood feeling of this street. She is concerned about parking on Glendale residential streets and it becoming harder and harder to do so. There are lots of residential apartments, condos. Condos do not provide adequate parking spaces, and she believes that this block of Milford is one of the rare streets that has a little bit more space than others, but she feels that it is also being crowded. Building 15 units low-income housing on this street, she believes will just bring more congestion to what is a nice, quiet residential area. She states that it seems tight to build 15 units on 2 lots, and it will just bring congestion to the neighborhood. She strongly opposes this project, and she feels we need to reserve more quiet, nice neighborhoods in the city. So that was the one comment we got from the neighbor. Before I go on, well, I'll have Ms. Toledo introduce the project first, and then I've got a quick question for you regarding this letter.
Thank you, Mr. Kiesel. As you stated, the project is located at 452 through 458 Milford Street. Currently, the zoning is R1650, which is medium-high density residential zone. The project consists of 2 adjoining lots totaling 14,505 square feet, developed with 3 dwelling units. The project site is surrounded by 1- and 2-story multifamily buildings. That includes both rental and condos. And there are 3-story developments in the immediate street block. The project is basically a relatively flat topography, rectangular in shape. The property regarding the buildings that are there now, it's, again, developed with 2 dwelling units. The project at 456 was constructed circa 1921, and the property at 458 Milford Street was constructed circa 1923. Staff did review the proposed demolition of the buildings on the 2 properties and determined that none of these 3 buildings exhibit historic characteristics that would necessitate further assessment or review. And further, the buildings are not identified as eligible for local, state, or federal listings in the DSP and the South Glendale Historic Surveys. So accordingly, none of the 3 buildings on the site were determined to be historic resources under CEQA. The project is exempt from CEQA review as a Class 32 infill project because the project does meet all the conditions for an infill development project. Moving forward, in the future, if the project moves forward, it will require design review, approval prior to the issuance of any permits for the construction of the proposed development. The project proposal, again, involves the demolition of the existing 3 dwelling units and the construction of a new 4-story, 25,397 square foot, 15-unit affordable rental housing project. The applicant is requesting 3 concessions and 2 waivers pursuant to Government Code Section 65915 and GMC Section 30.36, with 2 units reserved for very low-income households. This will be for a 55-year term. As stated in the draft housing plan that was included as an attachment under affordability. Again, the affordable unit shall be made available to very low-income households at an affordable rent as defined by the Health and Safety Code for a period of not less than 55 years.
So this was my follow-up question. 2 of the 15 units proposed are reserved for very low income. Okay.
Yes.
It's not the whole project.
No, just 2. Parking is provided with a 30 space, and that includes tandem configuration, on-grade covered parking garage. The project qualifies for, again, reduced parking inclusive of guest and handicap spaces under the state density bonus law. Each unit will provide 2 bedrooms, and again, the development will require design review approval. The developer, and I'll reiterate this, will be required to enter again into a density bonus housing agreement, which requires again that at least 15% of the units are made affordable to very low income households. As part of this request, the city would be required to grant the project a 35% density bonus, which results in 4 density bonus units, allowing a maximum total of 15. So a total of 2 units, which would be 15% of the 11 base units as of right, will be made available as rental units to very low-income households. And those very low-income residential units are comprised of 2-bedroom units. As part of, again, the density bonus, the applicant is requesting concessions and waivers. A total of 3 concessions are being requested, again, based on the level of affordability, the 15%. They're allowed up to 3 concessions.
And that's what they're asking.
And that's what they're asking for. They're asking for an increase or to increase the maximum height and stories to 41 feet height and 4 stories total. And they're also, where in the code requires 36 feet, 3 stories. So I'll refer to both. So there's an understanding how it deviates from the code. They're requesting an increase or to increase the maximum allowed floor area ratio to 1.75, where the maximum allowed is 1.0. And they are requesting to decrease the minimum and average required setbacks for the front and for the interior setbacks. In this case, the front required setback would be 20-foot minimum, 23-foot average for the first floor, 23-foot minimum, 26-foot average for the second and third floors. And they're proposing for the starting at the second floor for the front, 20-foot minimum, 26.6-foot average, and the third floor, 21-foot, 1-inch minimum, and 27.9-foot average. And then it's outlined in the report the interior setbacks that are being modified as well. They are also, now the burden of proof, or in this case, the burden to make those findings for the concessions would be on the hearing officer in this case. Pursuant to section 30.36080 of the GMC, when an applicant for a density bonus requests incentives or concessions, the director of community development shall grant the requested incentives or concessions unless written findings are made based on substantial evidence of one or more of the following. And the report outlines, and it's also in the code, what those findings are. Moving along to the waivers, they're requesting, in this case, the applicant is requesting 2 waivers. One is to exceed the maximum lot coverage of 50%. They are proposing 73.8. And the other is to not provide the additional open space required for additional density gained by having a lot width greater than 90 feet. Lastly, and before I move on, as far as the waivers or modifications, the burden is on the applicant to make those findings. In accordance with the code, there are specific findings as well that need to be made. Again, the hearing officer shall grant the request only if he or she makes all of the following written findings. Again, there's 4 of them, and they're outlined in the code and in the report. Parking concessions. The parking provided, we indicated, was 30 spaces, also in tandem configuration. The code requires 2 spaces per unit for 2-bedroom units and 0.25 spaces or quarter per unit for guest parking when a development has 4 or more units. The project will provide a total of 30, which is 2 spaces per unit. However, the project is not providing the 4 spaces for guest parking required under the code. So therefore, the applicant is requesting and will need the grant of the automatic parking concession under the California Government Code section 65915P, which provides that upon the request of an owner applicant, the city must allow the following vehicular parking ratios, and then it's outlined in the report as well.
So they're complying with the parking standards of affordable housing projects?
Yes.
Okay.
But they're not providing the required guest parking.
If this was not an affordable housing project, then they would be required 4 guest parking spaces. They're not providing that.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Staff is recommending approval, and there's also conditions attached to the draft conditions or draft decision letter. If there's, and the findings are outlined or discussed in the report. If there are any other questions or comments from you, I
I don't have any
conclude
more
my
questions.
remarks at this point, unless there are any further questions.
Nope. All right, thank you. All right, so I'm going to call the applicant up, Mr. Armik Shanazarians. Good morning.
As Milka indicated, the project, it is an affordable unit project. I just want to clarify one thing, that since the project is located within a public utility, like buses and things, that eliminates parking requirements. Basically, we need only 8 parking spaces to provide for this project. This is due to the state.
Okay.
So allowable parking on this is 8, but we're providing 30 parking spaces. So that means we're providing 2 parking spaces for each unit,
Right.
which will reduce the impact on the neighborhood and basically provide parking for the tenants or the occupants of the project.
Okay.
That I just want to bring that up as far as the letter that we received in conjunction with the opposing the project, because to the traffic and everything else. So I think that should clarify,
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
because the density bonus allows, if you are within public transportation, you can get that eliminated. One of the reasons that we also requested for the floor area ratio decrease is due to the fact that since we have a parking on grade, the floor area of the parking is being counted as a floor area ratio,
Right.
rather than the units. So that's one of the reasons that we're asking for.
Okay. Actually, since you brought that up, what would the FAR be if that level was not included?
I think if that level is not included, just allow me a minute, I'll tell you. It would be less than 50%, but
So the on-grade parking
is being
is
counted.
kicking the
floor
project
area
up
ratio.
from a compliant in terms of FAR to a non-compliant.
Yeah, due to the fact if it was semi-subterranean or subterranean, it would not count as a floor area
Okay.
ratio.
Do you, I don't know what else you're planning to present.
That's
But-
basically it.
Okay, what I'd like you to do, though, is go over the concessions and the waivers that you're requesting, and then tie that into to why you're requesting it.
Well, the concessions or the waivers basically, as far as the increase the maximum height, if I start with that, is due to the fact that since we have on-grade parking,
Okay,
and remember this is affordable housing, so we need, in order, if you go under subterranean, then we creating grading, demolition, and the cost. But doing this on grade, we're reducing tremendous amount of cost for this project. So that is one of the reasons.
what's the cost difference between a on-grade
More than
parking
$1 million.
space
More
and
than $1 million.
per space?
No, I'm talking about if you go subterranean garage.
Correct.
In conjunction with the thing, so the difference in the cost would be more than $500,000, because now you have the construction of the on-grade parking. If you
Is
take the difference,
About a $500,000
half
less.
is less.
Okay.
So that's one of the reasons. By doing that, you have to meet the handicap requirement. So we have to bring the height of the garage to 9 feet in order for interior dimension for a handicap van to be accessible. So
What would it normally be?
it would be 8 feet. Actually, head clearance is supposed to be 6 foot 8 inches, 9 feet for the garages. So we have to do that. So due to that fact, also increases the thing. And in some areas, as we discussed with staff, we break down the parking. We created the lower levels and higher level. You could see through the section to justify some planter areas and things like that.
Oh, I see. You're referring to this area? here
Correct.
And this area?
Correct.
Okay.
As far as the setbacks are concerned, we still maintained minimum 8 feet setbacks or 9 feet setbacks on the sides, and we we had many meetings with the design review staff and also Milka and Jay, and then so as you could see, the building mass breaks down somehow, but even though we are allowed to go zero setback based on the density bonus, we're still maintaining that 8-foot average or 9 feet or 12 feet on the first and second level also. Only the
What do you
first-
mean you're allowed to go zero setback?
But the core density bonus allows you to have a zero setback on the sides. But then since we have to go to a design review, design review has a jurisdiction also to ask, so we try to keep it as much as possible.
You probably can request a zero setback,
We request a zero setback,
but
if you didn't,
it's not required.
it's not required.
Okay.
Thank you. And as far as
So the setback deviations that you're requesting, why is that needed?
why is that needed is just basically 2 feet, that's 15-unit project as far as the floor area and the design of
Okay.
these things. We could have, as I said, enlarged it, but the design, the way that we designed it, it just meets comfortable units, like 1,000 square feet for 2-bedroom, which is, I think, it's not that big, or 1,100 max.
Do you know the average size of a 2-bedroom unit in Glendale?
I believe it says in there, if I may get my plans, I'll let you know.
Oh, I know what the unit sizes are for the project.
Yeah.
But in terms of, if you look at an average size 2-bedroom unit in the city,
Average size 2-bedroom units could be 1,200. I've seen 600, 700 square feet units that are built on Central,
Right.
1-bedrooms. This is a 2-bedroom, which is about 1,000 square feet.
so what's the average size of a 2-bedroom unit?
1,200.
So these are smaller than average.
These are smaller than average.
Okay.
And going back to allowable lot coverage, again, the lot coverage is due to the fact that we're having the garage on grade, and that is covering most of the property. So,
Okay.
as far as the waivers, I went over the waivers, that 50% the floor area ratio, and then additional open space. We do have a rooftop garden area, but I had this past problem with the projects that we went to design review and we had to modify certain things. Sometimes we cannot justify that landscaping. We will provide landscaping, but in case, I want to ask this waiver, in case we cannot provide that additional 1,100 square feet, I want to have some sort of a cushion in there, because as we go to a design review board, they modify the design sometimes. They request us to modify the setbacks, modify the front, or modify the building. And in some situations, you won't be able to provide additional parking spaces. But if you take a look at the floors, you could see that what we did is at the facade, at the front facade, the building looks like a 2-story building, and at the back, we put down the 4th story at the back so it doesn't look like a thing. But then in conjunction with that, we did a roof deck landscaping.
Yeah, I
so
saw
we
that.
might be able to provide that landscaping, additional landscaping, but
Okay, so let me ask you something to clarify this. So one of the waivers is
additional landscaping.
the additional open space.
Open space.
Minimum of 900 square feet of additional open space for lots greater than 90 feet in width that exceed density, plus an additional 20 square feet for each foot of lot width thereafter. So it's calculated at 1,100 square feet of additional open space.
Correct.
So is what you're saying now is that this project right here provides that, but you want to give some cushion if the DRB in their review changes things such that you can't provide this?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
So if you have any other questions.
No, not at this point.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks. All right. The next speaker, Grant Michaels, representing Glendale Homeowners Association.
Good morning. My name is Grant Michaels. I'm the president of the Glendale Homeowners Coordinating Council. I spoke last week as president of the Montrose Verdugo City Spar Heights Neighborhood Association on another affordable housing project. The points I made last week do apply to this case. We support the inclusionary affordable housing where the zoning permits it. Our concerns are with the waivers, the modifications, the deviations from code in these two projects are excessive. The required findings for approval are to show that it reduces the cost of development and does not have a negative impact on public health and safety. By comparison, I will look at two different projects. One on Adams near the Garfield campus that was approved last year, and another at 352 to 358 Milford, a block away, which was developed last year. Both of those were affordable projects. Both of those went through with very well-defined concessions. In the case of Adams, they did propose at-grade parking. They had a similar hearing where they were requesting a fourth concession. That was a hearing to go with the fourth concession, which would have been additional over the code. So the setbacks, the open space, the FAR, and at-grade parking were the four conditions they were proposing for that project. Mm-hmm. Each one of those was well-defined, and ultimately that fourth condition was modified to alleviate and not require a third condition.
Concession.
Okay. Sorry. With the project on Milford, a block away, that does have subterranean parking. And again, that project went forward with well-defined concessions, no modifications, no variances, no waivers. Looking at this project and the project from last week, there are about 10 deviations from code, from open space, setbacks, lot coverage, height, FAR, parking, requiring a parking reduction, at-grade parking, tandem spaces, which are not allowed in multifamily if this were not a affordable housing project.
Correct.
The guest parking, the ADA parking, and the building amenities through open space. Looking at an automatic parking concession, which I heard at this hearing, this is the first time I'm hearing that automatic concession is granted. Mm-hmm. The other examples of affordable projects that have gone before this, all of the parking concessions were specific, well-defined, and listed as a specific concession. Looking at this project, yes, all of these concessions, modifications, or waivers will reduce the costs. I do not see any evidence that eliminating some of these waivers and the additional variances and deviations from code would preclude this development from being built if it maintained just the waivers that it was granted through SB 1818.
Okay.
And following up with the impact on public health and safety, the parking is going to be the greatest impact for that. All of the concessions there will have a great impact on public safety, congestion, and the result of all of the concessions in this case will have an impact on public safety. Thank you.
Thank you. So actually, I've got a question for you. It's your contention that, if I'm understanding you correctly, the concessions that they're asking for are enough to provide the affordable housing, not necessarily the waivers.
Correct.
Correct? Okay.
And looking at the other examples of projects that have been approved and built prior, there are affordable projects that are built with simply the standing concessions
And not-
no waivers,
Okay.
and no automatic parking concession.
Okay, got it. Okay, thanks. Next speaker, Kathy Yurka.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Yurka, and I'm here on behalf of the Verdugo Woodlands West Homeowners Association to speak against approval of this project. This project has implications for development in our neighborhood and indeed all over Glendale. The project violates the Glendale Municipal Code, and I'm not talking about the requested incentives and waivers. I'm talking about the requirement that a project of this size have subterranean or semi-subterranean parking. This is not mentioned as a variance from the code at all in the staff report. Now, State Government Code 65915 requires Glendale to allow tandem and uncovered parking to meet parking ratios. However, a requirement to allow uncovered parking does not mean that Glendale is required to allow covered parking at grade in a first floor parking garage. The state code is very specific about parking, and uncovered and covered mean opposite things. One of the principal goals of the South Glendale Community Plan is to make Glendale a more walkable, pedestrian-friendly city. At-grade parking garages fail absolutely at that goal because they create an unattractive, alienating streetscape at the pedestrian level. I think we all know what will happen if this project and the project last week on Montrose Avenue are approved. Towering buildings with one or more at-grade parking levels will go up throughout the city, not only in place of single-family houses and multifamily zones, but in place of smaller-scale apartment buildings. Glendale will turn a state law and provisions that really do perform a social good, which is to make affordable housing economically feasible for developers, into policy that makes buildings like this one, which contribute a very small number of affordable units, into an irresistibly profitable kind of development with tremendous costs, I think, to the cityscape. And how do I know this? It's because people in the development community are saying so. I mean, they're watching this project and the Montrose project very carefully. I think there's a general consensus that Glendale did not plan very well for the increased density that came with the DSP, and staff have spent a good deal of time recently dealing with the problem of poor quality design. And staff should be proactive, I think, to prevent the problem from migrating even further to other parts of Glendale. Community development should educate council about the need to extend maximums and minimums for the incentives and waivers, which do exist in the DSP. And as the applicant just said, you know, I can have a zero setback for this project. And I know you push back on that a little, but technically there is no limit. There is no minimum setback for incentives, concessions, and waivers. As we've seen before, once the density bonus housing plan is approved, there's really very little that design review can do to modify the inherent design problems that are intrinsic to such substantial variations of development standards. And I think a proactive step would really help fight, I think, an oversimplification, but still a misconception, a perception that many residents have that community development is really more supportive of developers than the communities. But for now, what I ask you please to do with regard to this project is simply to enforce Glendale's code regarding the parking garage and send it back. Thank you for your consideration.
Thanks. All right, Mr. Shanazarian, do you want to respond? You have
I just
I think
want
3 minutes.
to, as far as the Adams project that the gentleman brought it up, I was also a consultant on that project, and we went through concessions and we went through waivers on that. So that's not a, if that's the Adams project, that we're talking about 900 blocks of Adams.
Okay. There were, according to your memory, there were both concessions and waivers for
Waivers
that?
on this on that project. I am not aware of the other project on Milford, but I know the Adams project went through concessions and the waivers. As far as the parking, again, in order to eliminate the parking garage, then my client would be, if you decide not to grant to us, then we will be able to go with the 8 required parking based on ASB, the state code, and
Okay.
provide that. So, I mean, that's
It's a
to
balance.
us. Yeah, it's a thing. So, we think that in order to provide adequate parking for the people, for the tenant, rather than for them to park on the street, it's best to have a parking garage to provide.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak? You can. You'll need to fill this out. Actually, you can do it after if you want to speak now.
My name is Christina Gulinian, and I'm a neighbor. I'm presenting our building and concerns of the people that live in that building.
Okay.
So a few things I want to address the builders in the city. I understanding the budget that the builders are facing, but however, certain concerns for basic concerns of the people that live in a neighborhood, obviously, is the parking. And we need to know that looking at the map here, we have the school, elementary school, and 465 lot next to the school. If we right adjacent to the school, there's a three lots. As of now, they are just small houses, which going to be under construction also. So if we're building another building over here, and in the future there's going to be another building built, that makes a lot of constraint on the parking. So I think for the future planning, if we're allowing 30 parking with the low income, meaning like not necessarily 2 people going to live in that house, could be 3, not providing extra space for caregivers for this low-income or handicapped people because school hours, the parking is not allowed. Also, like we need to think about community tranquility and quality of life of people, especially like if we're considering handicap parking, like that means we have to provide peaceful environment for them. Not providing landscape area, and especially in a rooftop, how a handicapped person going to get to the rooftop? That's another concern. Is there elevators in this building? I didn't see because they're building it like, I guess, 2 level and then 3rd level and a 4th level. So if providing landscape on a rooftop, handicapped person cannot get to it. So that contradicts itself. Building such a tall building in a neighborhood, it's kind of like hovers over other houses. There are 2 small houses next to it. The other, I addressed the floor. Okay, the school. During school hours, it's really difficult for me to get out of my own parking lot. Mm-hmm. It takes me like at least sometimes 10 minutes to walk, drive out of my own parking lot. There's no traffic light on Pacific. So making a left or right is fairly difficult. So introducing more buildings to it, I'm not opposing this project, but I think the size of the building and like how huge it is and how many people will live in that building, even though it's 2-bedroom, it's not necessarily guaranteed only 2 people will live there, right? So since we cannot constrain that,
we are proposing more people living there, so more traffic, and it's very difficult as of now using that intersection to cross the street in a school time or making a left, making right. So especially school hours, it's really difficult for me to get out of that parking lot. Now there's going to be building built in front of over there, 465, and next to I can't have the exact address. One of them is 465 lot. Those 3 lots are bought, so they're going to build big.
That's on the
Yeah.
opposite side of the street?
Yes. So
Then-
like
okay.
if I showed right here, this is going to be built. There's going to be construction here also in the future. So this is where that building is going to be. This is the school.
Okay, yeah, you need to come back and talk at the mic. Sorry.
Yeah, so as I showed, we are building a lot of buildings here with a lot of people. And as of now, as of today, there's nothing there, like, no buildings, and it's difficult to turn. There's a traffic school hours. You can't park school hours in the school designated areas. So considering all of this, especially there's no green area left. And we are introducing handicap area and stuff doesn't quite go with the neighborhood as we are building more buildings. Like we're constraining them to be stuck inside the building, inside their own small 1,000 square foot apartment. So I don't think it's very friendly environment. And also the parking is higher level. It's very difficult for the handicapped people to get in too. I mean, I didn't know this is designated as a handicap area too. So I just hear that and I'm like, there's a common things that need to be addressed to addressing handicapped people. So if they're building a parking lot and they're raising the parking lot and making a taller building, I'm sorry, my language is not, this is
That's okay.
not my occupation.
That's okay.
But making it taller, but not addressing their daily lives and how their life would be afterwards, it kind of contradicts itself. It's not just about the codes and waivers, but how tranquility and quietness, quality of life of people, not just in a building, but also, people around it. I mean, this will affect our building. This is going to affect me a year to breathe that dust and air, dusty air. We already have contaminated air. Addressing all of this, and especially getting so many waivers and making such a tall building, not leaving a landscape area, and not leaving any space next to neighbors, it's kind of like, to me, that's not what quality of neighborhood should be as of a regular person living there for more than 10 years.
Okay. Let me call the applicant back up again at his option to see if there's anything he wants to or needs to address on that.
As far as the handicap, we have provided 2 handicap spaces on the property.
Right, I
We
saw
have an
that.
elevator that is required by state law to provide access for the thing. And as far as
So there is elevator access to the roof.
there's elevator access to the roof that's required by the state. And as I said, and I want to mention something also. When you do subterranean parking, you got to consider the fact that it takes more time. It takes a lot of dust, a lot of grading, and it takes, as far as the construction, more time to do it rather than when you do ungrade parking, because now you don't do demolition of the ground or taking the dirt out or hauling the dirt, which creates tremendous amount of dust and all this thing. So that's the benefit of having ungrade parking rather than a basement.
No. Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I am going to close the public hearing and take the case under submission and conclude the hearing today. Thank you.